The Indonesian doll that moves when you blink. A young man was shocked when he saw an old lady sitting in a corner of the antique shop moving her head. But when he walked over to her, she suddenly stopped moving. It was then that he noticed her eyes were open. He called out to the shopkeeper, who came over and explained what had happened. The shopkeeper apologized and told him that it was just a doll that moved when people blinked. But the young man didn't believe him. He wanted to see for himself how the doll worked. So the shopkeeper took him to another part of the store and showed him a similar doll. This time, however, the young man was even more surprised. Not only did the doll move its head, but its eyes also followed his every move. And as if that wasn't enough, the doll also began to speak, saying, "You were very naughty." Before the young man could react, the doll's eyes turned black and it started to move towards him. Terrified, he screamed and ran out of the shop without looking back. What really happened in this antique shop? Is there such a thing as a doll that moves when you blink? Let's find out. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you the most exciting and mysterious stories from around the world. Join us as we take you on a journey through time and explore the unknown. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss any of our amazing videos. The antique shop was filled with all sorts of strange and wonderful items, each with its own unique history and charm. From old paintings to vintage cameras, the store was a treasure trove for anyone who loved antiques. But one item in particular caught the attention of a young man who had just entered the shop. It was an old doll sitting in a corner. The doll seemed to be observing everything that went on around it, and the young man couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as he approached it. As he got closer, he noticed something strange. The doll's head was moving slightly from side to side, as if it were alive. At first, he thought he was just imagining things. After all, dolls aren't supposed to move on their own. But then he blinked and the doll's head turned in his direction. Startled by what he had seen, he quickly looked away. But when he dared to glance back at the doll, he saw that it had turned its head again. And this time, its eyes seemed to be staring directly at him. Curious and a little creeped out, he decided to walk over to the doll to get a closer look. As he approached, he could have sworn he heard a faint whisper coming from the doll, but when he stopped to listen, he couldn't make out any words. Just as he reached the doll, he felt a sudden movement, and he quickly stepped back. To his horror, the doll's head had suddenly snapped towards him, and its eyes seemed to glow an eerie red in the dim light of the shop. Panicked, he stumbled backwards, knocking over a nearby display case and sending shards of glass scattering across the floor. At the sound of the commotion, the store owner came rushing over to see what had happened. When he saw the doll's head turn towards the young man, he let out a gasp. "Oh, I'm so sorry," he exclaimed, rushing to help the young man. "I should have warned you about that one. She's a bit temperamental, you know, but it's all just part of the fun, isn't it?" The young man, still shaken by his encounter with the doll, managed to stammer out a response. "What do you mean? Do you know what that doll does?" The shopkeeper leaned in conspiratorially and whispered, "They say that if you blink while looking at her, she'll move her head towards you. Some say she even speaks to those who dare to touch her."
Oh.
The young man couldn't help but shiver at the thought. He had never believed in ghosts or spirits before, but this doll was starting to change his mind. The shopkeeper, sensing his fear, quickly changed the subject and offered to help him find something else to look at. But the young man couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He excused himself and went to another part of the store, hoping to get away from the creepy doll. But no matter where he went, he couldn't help but feel like he was being observed. He started to notice other dolls with blank stares and lifeless eyes, and he couldn't help but wonder if they were all as sinister as the one in the corner. Determined to put his fears to rest, the young man decided to approach one of the other dolls. He picked it up carefully, trying not to make any sudden movements. And just as he held it in his hands, he felt a surge of energy course through him. He dropped the doll quickly and stumbled back, his heart racing. But the doll possessed him. Was that possible? The young man thought frantically. The shopkeeper, who had been watching him from a distance, quickly rushed over to his side. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. The young man, still shaken by his experience, managed to nod and whispered, "That doll, it felt like it was alive." The shopkeeper's face suddenly turned grave. "Shouldn't have touched that one," he said seriously. "She's not like the others. She's much more powerful." The young man couldn't help but gulp at the thought. He had already experienced enough of the doll's eerie presence, and he didn't want to risk angering it further. Just then, a customer entered the shop, and the shopkeeper quickly recovered his composure. "Can I help you with anything?" he asked the customer brightly. The young man, still feeling uneasy, decided to leave. He thanked the shopkeeper for his help and hurried out into the street. As he walked away, he couldn't help but glance back at the shop. He felt a strange sense of foreboding, as if the doll was watching him, waiting for him to return. But the young man was determined not to let the doll win. He shook off his fears and continued on his way, trying to convince himself that it had all been in his head. But as the days passed, he couldn't help but think about the doll and its eerie presence. He found himself drawn back to the antique shop, unable to resist the urge to see the doll one last time. When he entered the shop, his heart sank. There was the doll sitting in the corner, staring at him with its lifeless eyes. He tried to convince himself that it was just a doll, nothing more. But as he approached, he felt the same surge of energy course through him. He stumbled back, his heart racing. But the doll didn't move, didn't speak. It just sat there silently, its eyes boring into his. And then it happened. The doll's eyes suddenly flashed red and it started to move. It turned its head slowly, deliberately towards him, its eyes never leaving his. He screamed and ran out of the shop, not daring to look back. Was it all in his head, or was there something sinister lurking in that antique shop? What did the doll want from him? Why did it keep coming to life and watching him? These questions plagued his mind as he tried to come to terms with what he had seen. In the days that followed, the young man avoided the antique shop, fearing that he would encounter the doll again. But the memory of its piercing stare and eerie movements haunted his dreams. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, even when he was alone in his own home. He started to see shadows that seemed to move in the corner of his eye, and he couldn't help but jump at every sudden noise. Determined to put an end to his torment, he decided to confront his fears and return to the antique shop. He took a deep breath and walked in, his eyes searching for the doll. There it was, sitting in the corner, its eyes fixed on him. He could feel the familiar surge of energy course through him, but this time he stood his ground. As the doll turned towards him, he stared back, refusing to be afraid. He wanted to understand why it was tormenting him, what it wanted from him. But as he looked into its eyes, he saw not malice or anger, but sadness. It was a deep, soul-penetrating sadness that seemed to reach out to him, touching his heart. And then the doll spoke, its voice a whisper in his mind. "Help me," it said. "I'm trapped here." The young man was taken aback by the doll's words. He had never heard a doll speak before, let alone one that was trapped in an antique shop. But as he looked into the doll's eyes, he saw not a malevolent spirit, but a lost soul. He reached out and touched the doll, and as he did, he felt a jolt of energy course through him. Stumbled back, but this time it wasn't fear that drove him, it was curiosity. He wanted to know more about the doll, about its story, about why it was trapped in that antique shop. With gentle hands, he cradled the doll, feeling its sadness wash over him. And in that moment, he knew he had to help her. My friends, what do you think? Is there such a thing as a doll that moves when you blink? And what do you think happened to the young man and the doll? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing videos like this one. We appreciate your support and can't wait to bring you more incredible stories from around the world. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time and the unknown. Till next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world with us.